Mind if I ask you something about that bill? The question comes before anything else. No greeting. No explanation. Daniel Brooks keeps his fork halfway up, then lowers it back onto the tray. He doesn't finish the bite. Shoes stop beside the table, close enough that the chair across from him can't be used. The restaurant keeps moving. Plates clink. A register drawer slides open and shut. Daniel stays seated. He answers what was asked. It was for the kids. 70 plates aren't cheap, but it's done. Mark Reynolds doesn't move on. He doesn't acknowledge the answer. The small red indicator on the body camera clipped to his chest is already lit. He tugs once at the fabric near the lens, setting the angle down without saying why. His eyes go to the empty trays stacked near the window. Then back to Daniel's food. A pen appears in his hand, uncapped, and taps once against the rim of Daniel's tray. Light contact. No spill. Daniel glances down at the tray, then back to the table surface. He adjusts the napkin beside his plate, folds it once, then leaves it uneven. He resumes chewing, slower, not looking up. People usually don't spend like that unless they've got money coming from somewhere. Daniel swallows. His shoulders stay square to the table. He answers without adding anything. He's just having lunch. Reynolds shifts his weight. He doesn't look directly at Daniel when he speaks again. His attention stays on the empty chair across the table. What do you do for work? Daniel sets the fork down. He wipes his fingers, then leaves the napkin partly open. He asks why he's being asked. The question is level. He waits through a beat of background noise, just making conversation. Reynolds steps half a pace closer. The body camera tilts down with the movement, catching Daniel's hands, the tray, and the edge of the table. The lens stays there. Daniel picks the fork back up, takes a small bite, then stops chewing partway through. People should live within their means. Daniel looks up and holds the look. Reynolds keeps his head angled away, not fully facing him. Chairs scrape. Someone passes behind Reynolds and brushes his sleeve. Daniel asks again why he's being questioned. Same words. Same tone. The reply doesn't name any specific behavior. Something about general concerns. Awareness? No stated reason. Then the request arrives. Mind if I see some ID? Daniel doesn't answer immediately. He reaches into his jacket pocket slowly. Through the space the camera is already watching. He places the card on the table. He aligns it carefully with the edge, squared and neat, then pulls his hand back and rests it flat on his thigh. Reynolds picks it up. The camera angle shifts as his eyes drop. The restaurant noise swells during the silence that follows. Fork scrape. Someone laughs again. The card doesn't come back right away. When it does, it's set down at a slight angle, off by about a finger's width, not returned fully. Daniel notices the angle. He does not adjust it. He finishes chewing before moving again. Reynolds steps back half a step. The pen clicks closed. Something about just checking, about doing his job. The words come out smaller. The card is nudged back across the table. Not all the way. Just enough that the distance is technically gone. Daniel gathers it without comment and slips it back into his pocket. He says there's no reason for the interaction to continue. He stays seated when he says it. Reynolds turns away. He doesn't apologize. He doesn't explain. The camera rises with him and points toward the door as he walks out. The bell rings. The red indicator on the camera is still lit. Daniel finishes his meal. He takes his time. He carries his tray to the return station like everyone else. No one stops him. An employee nudges the empty chair across from his table back into place without looking up. Outside, Daniel sits in his car. He checks the time on his phone, then opens a notes screen and types the location name as it appears. He closes it and leaves the phone face down for a second before starting the engine. Reynolds is already driving away, the body camera recording the rest of the shift as if nothing happened. Daniel Brooks doesn't leave right away. He sits in the car with the engine off, the phone face down on the center console. The screen lights once from a notification and goes dark again. He unlocks it. opens the Notes app, and types the restaurant name as it appears on the receipt still folded in his pocket. He adds the time. He doesn't add commentary. He locks the phone and sets it back down. A delivery truck backs into the lot and idles. Daniel starts the engine and pulls out without looking toward the street where Mark Reynolds turned earlier. The report is filed that evening through the same channel Daniel has used before. The form asks for location, time, and whether body-worn video is present. He checks the box. In the free text field, he lists the questions in the order they were asked. He submits and closes the page. The email opens with a subject line, "Receipt confirmed." A case number appears beneath it. No timeline is listed. The sender is a unit mailbox. One line stands alone in the body of the message. This message confirms receipt of your submission. Daniel saves the PDF labeled Case Acknowledgement and does not reply. 2 days later, the restaurant preserves its footage. The request references a time window and a table near the window. The manager exports the clip, names the file, and uploads it to the portal. No one contacts Daniel about it. The body-worn camera file is queued after the restaurant footage. It runs longer than the lunch itself. The first review plays without sound. The angle shifts. The pen appears. The frame settles on the tray. The ID is placed on the table and comes back at a slight angle. The red indicator remains lit. The clip is rewound 3 seconds and allowed to run again. Playback resumes with audio. The questions play back in the same sequence Daniel listed. No one speaks for several seconds while the clip keeps running. The camera is held on the table longer than necessary. The clip is paused. A note is added to the file. The next morning, Mark Reynolds is told to report to a different building. The message includes only an address and a time. When he enters the interview room, the body camera is still running. No one asks him to turn it off. He's asked to describe the contact. "I was making conversation. I was curious. Community engagement matters." The interviewer waits, then asks, "What behavior triggered the contact?" Reynolds looks down at the table and shifts his chair. "I can't recall anything specific." The question is asked again, slower. "What behavior triggered the contact?" There's a pause long enough for the camera fan to register on the audio. Reynolds answers with the same sentence used in the restaurant. "People should live within their means." By the end of the week, a notice appears in his personnel file marked Administrative Leave Pending Review. The effective date is listed. His badge and issued equipment are logged, tagged, and placed into storage. The body-worn camera file is downloaded and sealed under the assigned case number. An external oversight unit submits a request for the footage. The request ID is appended to the record. The access log updates. Each open, each download, each view adds a timestamp beneath the file name. Daniel returns to work and keeps his calendar unchanged. When asked if he needs time away, he says no. A second interview with Reynolds is recorded. Representation is present. The questions match the first session. The answers track closely. There was nothing to report. When asked why the camera was active, the response is unchanged. It always is. A comparison clip from another day is opened. Same posture. Same downward angle. A different subject. The room stays quiet. A week later, Daniel receives an update stating that the review remains ongoing. No findings are attached. He saves the message to the same folder as the acknowledgement and adds the date to his notes. The termination letter is delivered as a scanned PDF. It lists conduct unbecoming, policy violations, and loss of public trust. The body-worn camera footage is cited by file name and timestamp range. The document is signed, uploaded, and marked final. The civil claim is filed without public notice. $500,000. The amount is itemized. The filing references timestamps, quoted questions, and still frames pulled directly from the video. Mediation follows. The settlement agreement is executed. Training updates and body camera audits are listed as conditions. The agreement is logged, countersigned, and archived. Daniel declines interview requests. When a colleague asks why, he says. The video already shows what happened. He returns to his desk and finishes the report he was working on before lunch. Months later, the footage plays in a training room. Recruits watch it once without commentary. Then they watch it again with policy language on the screen. When asked where the contact became unjustified, most point to the first question. The file remains stored under the assigned case number. The access log continues to accumulate entries. The lunch receipt stays folded in Daniel's jacket pocket until it fades. He throws it away. The file remains active. The finding is issued without ceremony. It arrives as a PDF attached to a system message. The subject line lists a case number and a disposition code. Daniel Brooks opens it once, scrolls to the signature block, and closes it. He saves the file to the same folder as the acknowledgement and the update notices. The file names line up by date. The document does not describe intent. It lists conduct unbecoming, policy violations, and loss of public trust. It cites the body-worn camera footage by file name and timestamp range. It notes the absence of a report following the restaurant contact. The language stays narrow. The margins are wide. Mark Reynolds receives the notice through internal channels. The effective date is the same day. There is no escort, no announcement. His access is disabled. Equipment already logged stays logged. The camera remains sealed under the case number. The civil claim proceeds on a parallel track. It is filed quietly, then amended once to add still frames pulled from the video. The amount is specific: $500,000. The filing lists timestamps, quoted questions, and a comparison clip. It avoids adjectives. Mediation is scheduled. The conference room is reserved. The agenda is circulated. The department does not contest the footage. The agreement is executed. Training updates and body camera audits are listed as conditions. The document is countersigned and archived. Daniel does not attend press events because there are none. He does not give interviews because he is not asked to. When an attorney explains the settlement terms, Daniel asks where the record will live. He is told the retention schedule and the access controls. He asks for the case number again and writes it down. Back at work, the calendar remains unchanged. Meetings start and end on time. Tasks move from one column to the next. When the topic comes up indirectly, he keeps his voice level. The video already shows what happened. The footage is introduced into training as a file, not a story. In a training room, the lights dim. Recruits watch the clip without commentary. The pen tap is visible. The camera angle drops. The ID lands square, then returns at an angle. The red indicator stays lit. The questions arrive in the same order. The room stays quiet. The clip restarts with policy language on the screen. A slide lists consensual encounters versus investigative contacts. Another slide lists triggers. The instructor asks a single question: where did the contact require justification? Most point to the first question. The timestamps remain on screen. The access log continues to update. Views are recorded. Downloads are restricted. Each entry adds a line beneath the file name. The comparison clip remains attached. The note added during the first review stays visible. Daniel keeps a copy of the settlement letter in the same folder as the finding. He does not reread it. The lunch receipt that once lived in his jacket pocket fades and tears along a fold. He throws it away. Months later, the oversight unit closes its review. The closure notice is brief. The case number is marked resolved. The file status changes to closed. The retention clock continues. The record remains accessible to those with permission. The camera does not change what it captured. If this is the kind of story you watch for, where process does the work and the file is allowed to speak, subscribe to Power Abuse Stories. We document moments like this for people who may find themselves in the same procedural space, when discretion is operating, and restraint is the safest move. The case folder remains where it was saved.